Dr. Tommy Broughan.
I think this is a very timely motion following the report of the Cost of Insurance Working Group, the report on the cost of employer and public liability insurance from last January. The report, of course, is the second piece of work of the working group, the first being the work carried out on motor insurance. And while there have been some small and welcome reductions in motor premiums, the motor insurance sector still remains problematic and continues, I think, to impact on the cost of doing business in this country and, of course, on the costs of ordinary citizens and households. The motion before us is fairly comprehensive, and I agree with the urgent need to tackle and implement the 15 action points referenced in the Cost of Insurance Working Group report. Of particular importance, I believe, are the requests for legislation and government action to legally require insurers to provide a breakdown of premium costs to a business and explain the basis on which those premiums have been calculated. Also, that the Personal Injuries Assessment Board, PIAB, Book of Quantum is updated regularly. I think it's every 3 years was a proposal, and it's based on medical evidence and costs and not solely on historic claims. And finally, of course, bringing forward the deadline for the Central Bank of Ireland's feasibility study for inclusion of employer liability and public liability and insurance data on the National Claims Information Database. The motion, of course, also rightly asks the Government to move towards the creation of the single European insurance market to increase competitiveness in the market. And I know some of the discussion around this, we've looked at what the impact of Brexit and so on could have on the whole market. Central Bank, of course, has a particular role, I think, in this regard, Minister, as well, because one of the unique things about this business is, when you look through the big players, as my colleague there said, a lot of them starting with the letter A, but when you look through them, quite a few of them are not regulated by our central bank. I mean, their regulator, I think, is the Bank of England or elsewhere. So this is another bizarre aspect, I think, of trying to regulate insurance in this country. But soaring insurance costs and legal costs are putting a strain, of course, on businesses across the country, and it's particularly tough for SMEs. The results of the Chamber of Ireland Cost of Insurance survey in August-September 2017 reported that 43% of respondents had an increase of between 5 to 20% in their premiums. Worryingly, a small percentage reported increases of 50% to 100%, and in some cases more than 100% increase in those premiums. And the justification given by the brokers for those increases included, I quote, market conditions, whatever they are, at 64%, and overall increases in claims at 10%, which you would imagine would be much more important. But business, of course, they have legal responsibility, first and foremost, to their workforce, to their customers, and indeed to the general public, and this is a fundamental cost of doing business. The National Competitiveness Council's NCC Ireland's Competitiveness Challenge 2017 report, published last December, also highlighted insurance costs as a serious impact on our competitiveness, and mentioned a lack of transparent data, which many deputies have referred to, which is available in this sector in this country, and the problems with international comparisons due to the nature of insurance and its role in business, including the fact, and I quote, that the final price charged is generally not publicised, and that's certainly understates the reality of this market. And the NCC report, of course, recommended some of the same recommendations we have here before us in this valuable motion tonight. So I welcome, therefore, the action plan in the report, which outlines deadlines, the relevant bodies responsible, and the lead owner of each action. That's the way we need to go with this. Anybody who's been involved in the running of a small business, as many of us here have, or who has served as a company director or still serves as a director, will know the impact of employer and public liability insurance costs on a company's annual expenditure, especially over the past decade. And directors, of course, at meetings often urge managers and CEOs to shop around. But the reality of the Irish market, of course, is characteristic by such limited competition, and despite the operation here of these large multinational insurers. A feature of the business, and indeed other insurance markets in Ireland, is the dearth of data available from the industry itself and from the court service to which the motion rightly alludes. And there's also little data available, astonishingly, from the Central Statistics Office and the Personal Injuries Assessment Board. And this incredible public data vacuum, by the way, that damages our responsibilities in legislating and doing business. If the relevant organisations don't simply produce the data that we need to be able to track this industry. But there is good evidence that in the 5.5 year period from January 2011 to July 2016, insurance costs generally rose by an astonishing 57%, and approximately approximately 42% of non-motor related PIAB applications are in relation to employer liability insurance and public liability insurance, 15% to 27% respectively. Now, the Insurance Ireland's their own fact files for 2016. 2016 is the last Insurance Ireland fact file that we have, Minister, but they report that their 18 domestic non-life members wrote gross premium of 3.253 billion in 2016, up 13.7% on 2015, yet gross incurred claims were 2.09 billion in 2016, down 0.5% on 2015. The Ireland's Insurance Ireland's fact file, however, shows a relentless rise in its members' gross non-life premium income from 2012, when that income stood at 2.44 billion, up to 2016, when it now stands, or it stood the last time we had figures, at 3.25 billion. And the significant portion of GDP and insurance workforce of over 15,000 people, of course, represented by the insurance business, does show the huge impact of insurance on all aspects of our economy and society, and I think it's generally running at around 5 to 6.5% of our total GDP. It's very striking too when you look at the last Insurance Ireland fact sheet or fact file on insurance density, the premiums per capita in 2016. Ireland's up there along with Switzerland, Hong Kong, the Cayman Islands, Netherlands, Luxembourg, those kind of countries. I think our total per capita insurance costs per capita in US dollars is 4,408. Yeah, way up there, above the UK. Above Norway, Australia, France, way above France, way above our EU partners, particularly the 26 partners of the future. So there clearly is a problem, Minister, and I believe you should urgently pursue the remedies that are outlined in this motion before us. We can't, of course, discuss insurance premiums without mentioning the legal costs associated with the sector. In the Department of Finance's work on motor insurance, it was found that such costs, of course, account for 42% of the compensation amount paid to claimants. For example, a 100k compensation payment will also incur a further payment of an average 24.9k for legal and other costs, and another 17.2k for insurer legal and other costs, meaning a total payment by the insurer of 142.4k. And there were reports, of course, towards the end of 2016 that insurance fraudsters from the UK were coming to Ireland to cheat the system and get much higher claim payouts than in the UK. And in one case, of course, the book of quantum payment in Ireland for a broken femur was 318% higher than the UK award. And if you look through the book of quantum, of course, you see these vast differences by comparisons with the UK, the market that we are, despite Brexit, so most heavily involved with. But one of the key aspects that many colleagues have said of the report, of course, itself, is the lack of transparency across the insurance sector, and the importance of improving transparency in this sector is mentioned a number of times. And this, of course, relates in particular, I think, to the court service, and the dearth of information from the court service is very concerning, and most citizens will ask why there's no easily available register of awards by the courts. And as it has been seen, I think, in traffic law and other important areas of law, it seems astonishing that in this digital age, and totally unacceptable in this digital age, that we don't have transparent and reliable data to help you, Minister, and other ministers in the future to plan our policies going forward. Last can, just the industry, of course, itself must take some responsibility for the strain, terrible strain it's placing on SMEs. And last July, of course, saw dawn raids by the European Commission on Insurance Ireland brokers and insurance, and the EU's competitive directorate have investigations ongoing into whether there's been a cartel actually operating in our motor industry here. So it's important, I think, that those European initiatives are continued, and that the other very important actions called for in the Fianna Fáil motion before us, that they are supported. So I want to support the motion, last can, and I'd urge the Government to speedily implement the 15 recommendations of the working group's report, so that we may begin to see some reduction in the horrendous business insurance costs.
Thanks for